Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're grabbing our trowels and digging straight into the ancient dirt to uncover the fascinating evolution of Anatolian religions. Thousands of years ago, the fertile lands of Anatolia were this incredible cradle of myths and deities. The region hosted countless civilizations over time. We're talking the Hittites, the Phrygians, the Urartians, the Luwians, and they created a religious and cultural mosaic that is just completely unique. So today we're going to explore this rich tapestry using the actual historical record and trace exactly how these ancient belief systems fundamentally shaped human society.
But first, here's a mystery for you. Did these millennia-old deities actually vanish completely, or are they literally just hiding in plain sight in our modern lives? I mean, it's so easy to look at a bunch of ancient ruins and just assume that the religions practiced there died right alongside the people who built them. But as we dig through these mysterious archaeological excavations and analyze the deep-dive interviews with experts, we start to realize that the cultural roots planted by these civilizations run incredibly deep. So the real question isn't just what they believed, but what fragments of those ancient beliefs we unknowingly carry with us today.
Take the work of archaeologist Dr. Ayşe Yıldırım, for example. She didn't just spend her time dusting off ancient tablets, she actually used her own grandmother's tales to connect modern water festivals directly back to ancient Anatolian cults. By tracing those personal, everyday stories back into the depths of history, scientists like her are proving that some of the traditions we still practice right now are direct descendants of these lost religions. It's wild to think about, but every new discovery pulls the past just a little bit closer to our present.
And just to put the sheer scale of this history into perspective, we are talking about Anatolian settlements dating all the way back to 7000 BC. That means the religious concepts that eventually passed down to groups like the Hittites didn't just pop up overnight. They were shaped over an immense period of time. This resulted in a really distinct historical divide. You have the first era, marked by the pre-Hittite Hattians and their nature spirits, and then a second era, starting with the Hittites and their incredibly human-like gods.
Section 1. The First Era. Hattians and the Spirits of Nature.
So, the pre-Hittite Hattians were the original locals of Anatolia. And while we don't have a massive amount of written records from them, we do know their beliefs profoundly influenced everyone who came after them, including the mighty Hittites. They practiced a polytheistic nature religion where the environment itself wasn't just a backdrop for humanity, it was the main character. For the ancient Hattians, divinity was not some human figure sitting on a throne. It was a living, breathing spirit residing within every single natural element. Both good and evil spirits permeated everything. When they saw plants growing and bearing fruit, they didn't just see biology at work, they saw the literal, direct manifestation of a divine, life-giving force.
And because they worshipped the life force of nature, early priests didn't bother with grand, enclosed temples. Instead, they performed their rituals and divination at naturally sacred sites. The earth gods lived out in the high mountains, the dense forests, and the vast valleys. So worship naturally happened right at the source, by great rock formations or alongside riverbanks and natural springs. We see clear evidence of early religious officials being entirely integrated into the natural landscape, leading ceremonies and reading omens right there beneath the open sky.
Section 2. The Rule of Three. The Divine Architecture.
Now, this early Anatolian belief system was built on a pretty strict geometric blueprint. The universe was cleanly sliced into three distinct realms, and every single divine entity fit perfectly into one of these layers. You had the heavens above, the earthly ground below, and the purifying waters. The highest deities sat up in the sky, commanding the sun, moon, and stars, and sending down both happiness and absolute destruction through storms. Meanwhile, the earth deities monitored the land, and the water gods ruled the seas and rivers, which, by the way, is exactly why water held such a deeply sacred and purifying quality in ancient Anatolia.
Within those three realms, the gods had three very specific jobs, creating a cyclical function for humanity. First, you had the protectors, guarding the cities and the people. Then you had the nourishers, who brought abundance, ended famines, and healed illnesses. These were essentially the gods of light and goodness. And finally, you had the destroyers. These were the dark gods of ruin who were constantly locked in battle with the gods of light. This endless push and pull, this constant tension, really defined the entire ancient Anatolian worldview. But then things start to shift. As these local traditions began merging with the customs of newer civilizations, the whole concept of the divine got a massive overhaul. The separation between human action and divine nature began to blur, setting the stage for a totally new era of worship. We see this massive evolutionary shift in human cognition, moving away from those abstract environmental spirits and toward relatable, highly dramatic gods modeled directly after humans.
Section 3. Enter the Hittites.
Gods with human flaws.
Welcome to the Second Era, where the gods literally took on human form, and frankly, human drama. They were no longer just the abstract spirit of a mountain. Now they loved, they conversed, they fought wars, and they threw absolute raging tantrums. And this shift toward humanized, political deities didn't happen in a vacuum either. It was heavily influenced by the sophisticated myths of their Mesopotamian neighbors. Groups like the Hittites, Luwians, and Urartians had a lot of contact with the Sumerians and Akkadians. Through trade and diplomacy, the richly characterized mythologies of Mesopotamia poured straight into Anatolia, forever changing the names and the complexities of the local gods.
The Hittites actually adopted these famous Mesopotamian deities and seamlessly mapped them right onto their own traditional structure. For instance, the Babylonian sky god Anu, the earth god Enlil, and the water god Ea fit perfectly into that three-tiered universe we just talked about. The language of the Hittites became infused with Sumerian concepts, brilliantly blending this imported theology with their homegrown Anatolian architecture of the universe. But don't worry, they absolutely kept their vast, localized pantheon alive and well too. You had gods like Kubaba, a sky goddess of abundance, who specifically protected women and children. Pahur commanded all fire and flames. Hashash protected the literal hearth inside the home, essentially acting as the ancient world's ultimate home security system, which of course required daily offerings. And Shupaluli-Uma was the god of pure, cool springs who could cure illnesses and prevent droughts for those who showed him the proper respect.
You also really needed to keep the volatile storm gods happy. Guys like Zash-Zapuna and Teshup were notoriously angry entities. Think of them as incredibly volatile neighbors who, if they felt slighted, could bring utter ruin upon your city through terrifying natural disasters. The people of Anatolia lived in constant fear of their wrath, which meant that keeping these gods happy wasn't just some weekend spiritual hobby. It was a literal matter of sheer survival.
Section 4. Life, Death, and the Divine State.
Because the stakes were literally life and death. We're talking famine, plague, or total destruction. Religion essentially became daily survival and state politics rolled into one. It was a fascinating societal structure where kings regulated nature through sacrifices, and committing a crime was practically a religious offense. Kings were sometimes seen as divine themselves, acting as the ultimate high priests to ensure military victories and even regulate unpredictable weather. Breaking the law was a dangerous sin that could anger the gods and bring catastrophe upon the entire society.
The day-to-day reality of this was intense. It demanded constant rituals and a deep reverence for sacred elements like fire, plants, and animals. It also required a huge amount of respect for the afterlife, ensuring that burials included sacred items so restless spirits wouldn't come back to haunt the living. Entire classes of special religious officials were required just to manage this incredibly complex system around the clock.
Section 5. The Living Legacy of Lost Gods. So, we've journeyed from those powerful, abstract nature spirits of the Hattians all the way to the highly organized, emotional pantheons of the Hittites. But history rarely just stops and disappears into thin air, right? Far from being erased, these traditions were absorbed over millennia. They survived in everything from the worship of the Phrygian goddess Cybele to the vibrant Anatolian water festivals we still celebrate today. The concepts forged in these ancient eras directly influenced the Greeks, the Romans, and eventually European cultures. That deep reverence for the earth and the purifying nature of water never actually left the region. It just adapted, taking on new names and forms across thousands of years.
As our source material profoundly points out, understanding how humanity conceptualized divinity thousands of years ago is absolutely key to understanding our own cultural DNA. We are quite literally the sum of those who came before us. By unearthing these lost gods, we aren't just looking at isolated historical trivia. We're looking at the very building blocks of human psychology, society, and our enduring relationship with the natural world.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. What seemingly innocent tradition in your own life is actually an echo of a lost ancient god? Whether it's a local festival, a little superstition you have about the weather, or even just the way we view the elements around us, the lost gods of ancient Anatolia might not be entirely lost after all. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the origins of the world around you.